let's head over to our next session, which is personal branding and activation. And we have, who I had mentioned earlier, Gary Reyes, who's helped me put the summit together, as well as Chris Sempic, who's the founder of Kansai Wheels. How cool is that? Also the chief engineer. He develops those wheels. Talk about personal branding. Gary, I'll start with you since you helped me put on the summit. How is drifting different from traditional motorsports? I know it has a younger demographic. It's more attitude based, not as much television, but it's also what I believe the fastest growing motorsport in the United States. So when it comes to sponsorships, how is it different from traditional motorsports?
I think that's a loaded question in a sense, but I will say with drifting, I mean, it's been very content based and it produces a lot of great content just naturally, right? Loud engines, generally, tire smoke, um, the look, the feel. So I think in that sense, it sets itself apart all from the other motorsports alone. Um, but I would also say that when it comes to drifting, that it's still very young. And that I think in a sense sets it apart too. Just the history of drifting in the US isn't as long as, drag racing or some of these others that have been around since very early on. I think Formula Drift celebrated what 25 years last year, I think it was. So it's not compared to other motorsports, it's not as aged in that regard.
Right on. And then Chris, how many teams does Kansai support in drifting, and why do you sponsor?
We sponsor a good amount of pro spec drivers and just 2 pro drivers, but we sponsor a lot more grassroots drivers. And the value that they bring to us is definitely in the content and how their personal brands that they're building can complement the brand that we are trying to build, because brands with the power of the internet are having a lot of fun being smaller and not bigger. And when you have smaller brands and not such, I say large brands like Coca-Cola and Nike, like those brands will always be there. But I think with the age of the internet, you'll see a lot of fun new smaller brands come out, and those brands have personality that they're trying to cultivate. And I think it really complements the drift industry and the drifters also have their own sense of personal style that they're bringing to the sport, and how can those complement each other as far as what brands are trying to build and what drivers are trying to build for themselves as their own self-image.
So with Kansai specifically, what type of image are you looking for? Are you looking for the good guy or the renegade?
We like to consider ourselves a little more edgy, a little more on the renegade side. We like, that people that thrash on our products, we like to say, it's okay to hurt our wheels. It's fine. They're made for that. Beat them up. We're young. We're only 6 years old. We really enjoy content and interesting visuals. So the approach that we take is definitely more individualistic, more stylized than some of the larger companies are looking for more of a polished image. We enjoy the space that we're in, where it can be a little more individualistic, and so that's the brand we're trying to be too. We love the people that we work with that are pushing their self imagery and their self content to be out there, and we look for that as far as complementing our brand and our marketing efforts.
Excellent. So you're looking for somebody who's just legitimate and real, that matches your personality, the brand's personality. Then that's somebody who's be considered for sponsorship. Cool.
Yeah.
Gary, I'll go to you then. When it comes to personal branding, what advice do you have for drivers trying to create a personal brand? I'm just starting out. I'm a new drifter. I don't know what my personal brand is. I don't even know what it means. How do I go about developing my personal brand?
So I think this is a great conversation for grassroots drifting, because I think with so many grassroots drivers, this is the question: is like, what's the starting point, right? And I think this is it. It's super easy to do a personal assessment of your brand. I mean, what does your digital footprint say about you, right? So go through your social media and take a look at the content that you're posting and the quality of the content that you're posting. Because remember, social media goes both ways. While you can look for brands on social media, if you approach brands, they can look you up. They can see what you do, right? So it's very important that you can that you are conscious of your image online. And the best thing is, when it comes to your personal brand, there's no wrong answer, because different brands want different things, right? I think what all brands do like is authenticity. They want you to be authentic. They want you to be yourself, because obviously that's what's going to shine through when you're presenting their product, right? So I think as a great starting point is that assessment piece for sure.
Like they say, you are what they Google. Chris, do you ever do that? Do you ever go out and Google the drivers who are approaching you to see who
Every
they are,
time.
what they're all
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Every time.
Nice.
And which is good, because everyone is trying to put their own little story out there, their own profile, and they grow their own following. So like Gary said, there is no wrong answer. Like, you put out whatever you want. You know, if a brand sees that and doesn't fit, that's fine. And on the same side of that, we're not going to seek someone out and make them do something that they don't already do or they're not comfortable with. You know, like if we approach someone and then we say, hey, we really want you to say you love our stuff, and we haven't even set them the wheels yet. You know, it's like, we're not going to ask people to do that. Like, it's
Cool.
we don't want to work that way. We'd rather have you be within your comfort for what you're willing to offer to a sponsor too, because if a driver needs to have their own boundaries as well, you know, because whatever you put out there is what you attract. And if you're not putting out product testimonials and stuff like that, we're not going to go to the lengths to ask you to do something that you're not already doing. So whatever you put out, we're going to seek to use you for, you know, and we're not going to make you do something that doesn't fit our brand or complement the brand that, you know, you're building for yourself.
So let's say you find a driver that has a complementary brand, someone whose personality seems to match Kansai quite well. Like, oh, this is good. I like this person. I like this driver. You told me once that person, it's important that they be realistic. But what would that
Sure.
relationship look like? What does a sponsorship look like exactly? Is it all monetary? Is it part product, part money? Is it marketing? Is it a combination of the three? Do you do title sponsorships or not? What does a sponsorship look like?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we have lots of different packages, and mostly it's product based or partial discount based. I'd say for the majority of it, a lot can go really, really well with those type of things. But for people that have a higher, you know, profile, or they're already very involved with current partners that have a certain asking price and have a equity built for themselves that is, you know, visible and communicatable through a few meetings and phone calls. Like, yeah, there's always a monetary component that can happen to complement someone's program that's really like well established. But we've seen a lot of luck with just product and partial discounts, which is really great. And one thing we just started implementing this year is the sponsorship tier packages, where we, to help the communication process on in our early conversations, is, hey, here's the menu. We have a gold package. We have a bronze package. We have a silver package. Where do you think you fit in? Because each one of these has different deliverables. And if you don't think you can do everything that gold requires, maybe we start you off on the bronze package, you know, a lot less strings attached. We don't need to talk every day, every week, every 6 months, but, you know, here's some simple things that just start, here's the discount value that's associated with that. You tell us what you're looking to do. And we think that's taken a lot of the awkwardness out of the, you know, Mexican standoff. That is, who do you, you know, what can you do? What can I do? It's like, here's the menu, order off the menu. If you don't want the Wagyu ribeye, don't order it. You know, if you just want the fries, let's start there. I'd rather start small, but I wanted to share that on this call today because I think it's really important that the communication early on for expectations is simplified, because a lot gets weird early on. So we were always racking our brain, how can we simplify this? And the tiered packages is kind of what we came up with recently.
I like that tiered packages because it allows someone to sort of dip their toes in and see if they're a good fit, if they can be a brand ambassador to the brand itself, if there's a culture fit. Culture, I think, is very important, and that's part of this conversation. Gary, I'll go back to you. You were saying in drifting that drifters actually have to create their own buzz because there's not a lot of media behind the grassroots series, at least. You said
Yes.
just go out and hire a photographer. There's usually photographers or videographers at the events. What are some ways that drifters can create a buzz and start to develop and project their personality in the media?
So I think Chris Forsberg said it when he said invest in yourself. I think that's a good start, right? I mean, before a brand's willing to invest in you, you have to invest in you. And if we're going back to even the content that's reviewable and viewable by brands, um, as grassroots drifters, the majority of drift organizations have on-staff media, or they publish the media list before events, which are for hire. And I think that's a great start, right? You can pay, I mean, it's not extremely expensive, but you can pay for coverage at events. And that's the media that you should be posting and the content that you should be using, which later on you talk about decks and whatnot. But some of those high quality pictures, those videos are what you need to help set you apart from the next guy in that regard.
You had mentioned in the past that there's different programs. You told me that there's a racers program versus a contingency program. Like, let's talk about that for a split second, and while you're gathering your thoughts. It kind of goes in line with what Chris was just saying about the different tiers, the gold, bronze, silver. But a contingency obviously is sort of a discount on parts, and hopefully you get a podium, so you get a little extra money. How do the racers programs work in grassroots drifting? And then, at least for a driver wanting to create more value for sponsors, how does that work?
So there is, every brand has their own or a different type of program when it comes to that. So I don't want to speak on behalf of the different brands. Uh, but I would say that when it comes to programs, that there is a great entry into sponsorships through these programs, right? Like, even if they are a coupon code or as Chris was saying, hey, it's a bronze, right? Or in their case, right, a bronze, a gold. That could be the entry to the long-term relationships that Chris Forsberg was talking about, right? So don't be afraid to start with a brand that suits your style, that suits you, um, as the starting point, right? And then over delivering for that brand to grow the relationship so they do want to do more with you,
Oh yeah.
right? And I
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's great for grassroots drivers, because oftentimes the question that we ask is like, how do I add value? Oh, what could I actually do for them? They have more followers than I do on Instagram or on social media. Like, these are all the insecurities you have when you go to approach brands. And I think in reality, you need to start somewhere, because you need to start building the relationship. As Jim said, there's the brand, and then there's the decision maker, who's the personality. So you need to meet the person and grow the relationship with the person by working, by showing them that you can do what you say you can do. And then I think through that, you can evolve that relationship to more than just a bronze or a coupon code or just that contingency program, depending on the brand.
And we're actually going to go into that in the decks and proposals session, because you create a deck for a person, but you create a proposal for a business. And we will go into more detail on that in a minute. Chris, I'm going to go back to you, since Gary was just mentioning social media. How important is a large social following to you, or is that just an added bonus?
I'd say it's just an added bonus. It's always cool that people have built that for themselves and have that reach, but it's not always the magic answer at the end of the day. There's a lot of really hardworking drivers that are humping it every weekend that don't have the biggest following, but they're living the brand. They're in the trenches, like literally, Saturday and Sunday just completely burnt on the track, and that's great. And we need those kind of drivers too, because there's a lot more than just tooting your horn on the internet. There's product feedback. There's how you're acting out there as a brand representative. There's a lot more that goes into it than just your online presence, and we value that too. So I don't want anyone to think, oh man, I'm not a TikTok star, I can't approach this brand. It's not always the case. We love people that are really passionate about weekend warrioring and working that 9 to 5 and still, turning laps at the track. It's really, really cool. And I think a lot of us that don't work in the industry kind of started that way too. It's like you got to have that split between both lives. And when you're doing that, you don't always have the time to build a giant following. That's a job in itself. So I think it shouldn't be overlooked that, you know, a big following equals big value, because there's a lot of value in people with less of a following that are really true to what they do.
I've personally found that small groups of like-minded community members are more effective in at least promoting something, in my case, summits, than large organizations with tens of thousands of members.
Sure.
I've had affiliates that have maybe 200 followers or friends that they're connected to redeem more promo codes than organizations with 40, 50,000 members. So because they're like-minded and they're part of that community. Chris, I'm going to stay with you for a second, because I know you probably get asked about entitlements all the time. Everybody wants to be the title brand, wants you to be the title brand on their car.
Sure, yeah.
Do you do entitlements? And if not, why not?
No, we don't. We never have. It sounds really cool. We would love to have the creative capacity to completely brand someone's vehicle, but that's a lot taller order, you know, as far as content and really like a lot of curated deliverables. And we, you know, honestly, you're going to see the wheels no matter what, is what I always say. So, and that, you know, people seek out companies like Wheels just on their image and their wheel designs alone. So we kind of benefit from like that over maybe a cam or a piston company or a shock company. They don't have that visual draw. But also, you know, I'd rather sponsor 10 smaller teams and individuals than put all my eggs into one big pro that needs that title. Or even there's grassroots guys that want title, and I'm like, hey man, that sounds really cool, but it comes with a lot more, you know, responsibilities and deliverables. I don't think you want to bog your program with me bugging you for, you know, a bunch of stuff that you probably don't even have the capacity for. So let's be realistic and, you know, keep it, you know, a lot less than, you know, title. So maybe associate or something lesser, or maybe like a cool like hybrid package we come up with. But no titles on our side, and we're gonna keep it that way because we never had a need to, and I don't mind saying that.
Now, since you're a wheel company, it seems obvious that you might also work with tire companies. If that's the case, how do you do that? How do those partnerships or sponsorships work? If you're sponsoring a driver that a tire brand also sponsors, do you guys work together to cross market?
Sometimes, not always. We should probably do a little bit more with that this upcoming year. But yeah, we've been sponsoring, like Odie was a, you know, really great example when he was a Falcon. Really cool kind of cross-pollination of marketing. Like whenever Falcon, of course, would do a big campaign, we would kind of ride the coattails of that. Always cool to see. But I think a little, you know, inside information is like, no, we don't always work hand in hand with the tire companies, because people have their own marketing initiatives and everyone has their own budgets, and to come together on something really collaborative might be a little bit more than each brand can bite off and chew. If it happens, great. Like we've had some cool organic stuff happen with Kenda, which we're really proud of. And we've, you know, had Kenda tires on our boost cars at Formula Drift, and it's really worked out kind of cool that way. But no, we never really seeked out, you know, partnerships with the tire companies, because everyone's kind of already doing their own thing, unless it was like a major product launch or something with like a lot of budget behind it. No, I can't say we've worked with any tire companies like hand in hand, but it'd be cool. You know, in the future, we're definitely open to it.
Okay, cool. And we'll actually have Ed from Kenda on shortly at the sponsor speed dating session. We'll hear what Kenda looks for.
Ed is incredible. Ed is truly an asset.
Good to hear that. So Gary, we're talking about personal branding in this session. And personal branding is important because it allows the series to grow. If the drivers in a series become personalities, what's a good way to grow a fan base? And what's a good way for drivers to help their series grow? Presumably, if the series grow, then all the drivers in the series will also grow.
I think there's a couple different ways to do that, but for one, it's consistency, and especially in social media and posting, consistency is the key. And I'm sure Megan could answer or could give more tidbits on that than I could. But I think that's a great starting point. But I do want to touch on one thing that Chris and I spoke about, and I see it being mentioned in the comments when it comes to deliverables, right? As grassroots drivers, oftentimes we may become eager, try to get a sponsorship in conversation, and you start trying to agree to every deliverable. You know, oh yeah, I can do this. Oh yeah, I can do that. Oh yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
Chris, what was that? That's a red flag, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Don't do everything. It's okay to say no. Like, don't,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I talked to a driver the other day. Like, yeah, I'll do anything you need. I'll do anything. And it's like, no, whoa, we don't. That's just too open ended. I'd rather you say, hey man, I don't really have a YouTube channel. It's not really popping off for me. So I'm not gonna, don't go down, don't dig yourself in a hole on saying I'll do anything just to get product. Like, no, don't humble yourself up, man. Don't go down that road. Just know who you're about and know your boundaries and your capabilities and speak to that. And if you're new and just starting out, like really, as I said, under promise, over deliver. That's it. But yeah, totally, Gary.
And one more point on personal branding that Chris and I were speaking about is how do you handle adversity when it comes to your sponsor or the product that your sponsor is providing, right? So let's say if things do go wrong with the product, how you handle that says a lot about what that brand will do with you next, and what other brands may want to do or not do with you, based on your reaction. And I mean, Chris, I think you can comment on that also.
Yeah. I that we were kind of talking about in our earlier conversation about activation and like what you're like on the scene. And I think it's important, no matter what component it is, they can all fail. We're doing a sport that is really pushing all the components to its limit, and things are going to happen, whether in your control or out of your control. And when a part fails, I don't care if it's a wheel or your seatbelt or your steering wheel, as a sponsored driver, how you act when that happens is part of the sponsorship. Don't start cussing, your part because it broke. Maybe it was your fault, maybe it wasn't. But everyone in the pits will see that, or on grid will see that. And, if it's a wheel, if you debeat it and you start cussing, like, you got to think like an endorsed athlete would think. And it's not hard, but I think a lot of people are, not so formally trained in that. But it's just common sense that, you should respect the company that's working with you and not just throw them under the bus when something goes wrong. You say, hey, yeah, man, I pushed it a little bit on the tire pressure on that. I shouldn't have done 11 PSI. I was going too hard, and you can either just be realistic about it, but don't cuss out a brand you're working with just because the part failed. And maybe you lost the race. Maybe you lost the whole weekend because of that part. Maybe it was the company's fault. Then just don't say anything. Like, yeah, we tossed it this weekend. Oh well. But especially online in the comments too. It in real life and in the comments. If you break a wheel or something happens, we don't want to see you saying, yeah, but they were free. They're free. It's okay. No, we don't. Nothing's free. It's a trade. It's an agreement. But just be respectful of when stuff goes wrong.
And that
Yeah, for
applies.
sure. And that's why
even
we
at
call them brand ambassadors. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah,
I was actually that
100%.
that was the point I was actually going to make, is that even at the grassroots level, you're a brand ambassador for all the stickers on your car, right? And all the parts that are on those stickers that are on your car. So even if the event only has 100 people on it, if you're running up and down the pits talking junk about whatever part it is, that's going to resonate with people. And your job is actually the opposite when you're sponsored at any capacity, or representing any brand at any capacity, is to provide that positive outlook. Help them. You're trying to help them make more sales or get exposure or get whatever it is. and shedding a negative light does the complete opposite of that. So just
Don't do it.
something about
because
branding.
the brand can find out. Word travel. It's a small scene, the word gets back, and people get recorded on cell phones, and it happens. But and comments get screenshotted. So don't think it's just under the radar. If something goes wrong, just reach out to the brand and say, hey, I dusted a wheel this weekend. I don't know what happened, but I went off track. It blew up. Maybe you guys should look into it, and just open that dialogue. Talk about it. Tell us, or tell the company that's sponsoring you before you start, just running around. Emotions are high. We get it, but when you are receiving product in exchange for services, you are technically, a very small portion of you as an employee or an arm of that company. So you need to think of yourself as that way when their name is literally on your vehicle, suit, trailer, helmet, whatever.
And it only takes one person in the audience to record you, upload you, post it on social media, share that, and go viral with it. You don't have to have a large following to create a big impact, but whether positive or negative, if you're at an event. So we only have a couple of minutes left. Let's do 1 minute each. Last words of advice to drifters on the call seeking sponsorship. Let's go. Chris, since you're on, or actually since Gary's on the screen, Gary, you go first. Last words of advice.
Last words of advice would be, don't be afraid to reach out. I think is my words of advice. One, come correct. So as this session goes on, you're going to learn a lot. Make sure you approach the companies the right way, and make sure you do your research. Learn the companies that you seek. It's been said by everybody here so far that has spoken about brand alignment. Approaching brands that fit your personality, fit your personal brand. So I would say do your research, find the brands that actually resonate with you and that you could represent and do justice for.
Amen to that. Chris, last words of advice.
I'm going to piggyback off of that, and you should know who you are. Know what you're trying to build. Know the brand that you are yourself personally and the brand you put into your motorsport. But before you, like Gary said, research the companies that you're looking out for, but know who you are. And don't just reach out to companies because you heard they were giving out stuff and you wanted to grab that stuff. It's not about that. It's literally, hey, I'm not into Adidas stuff. I don't live that lifestyle. I'm a Nike person. I like Nike. Know who you are. All these brands are in your life already. And you already are making decisions and curating yourself. So just know who you are when it comes to your motorsport. I think that'll really help how you approach sponsors, the conversations, and where you go with the branding of your wrap and your merch and even your media. You got to think of yourself as your own little company, and just cool companies know who they are, and you should know who you are too, and not just, make it up.
I like that. I think that's a very valid point. Know your personal brand, honestly. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.